My name is Kumi Naidoo. I am the Executive Director of Greenpeace International, and my role essentially is being the global head of Greenpeace, being the person that represents the organization to the various different publics, as well as being overall responsible for the finance, the campaigning, the human resources, and the governance of Greenpeace globally. Greenpeace is a campaigning organization, and we campaign and put pressure on governments and businesses to act in positive ways to reduce the environmental destruction that is happening, as well as to respond to the environmental challenges with good solutions. So a lot of what we do is also solutions work, where we make proposals on how can we, for example, move from an economy that is driven by dirty, brown, fossil fuel-based energy to clean, green, renewable-based energy. The role of Executive Director of Greenpeace International sort of exists in virtually any other NGO, though the title might be somewhat different. Sometimes they're called managing directors, CEOs, president, and so on. But every non-profit organization that employs staff, some non-profits don't have any staff, some have staff. Right? If they are bigger, like Greenpeace is, and we have staff, then when you have staff, then generally you need you could call it a chief staff officer. And I would say all non-profits employing people will have a chief staff officer. I think the one campaign that I'm extremely proud of is the work done by Greenpeace Africa in West Africa, where there has been a terrible problem of overfishing, and as a result, local people were not able to catch any fish. These are fishing by what are called monster boats, coming from overseas, from Europe and Asia mainly, and literally raping the oceans of West Africa. Greenpeace Africa campaigned with local fishing communities, put pressure on the European Union to change its policy, and convinced the Senegalese government to cancel all foreign commercial fishing licenses and to impose a moratorium on commercial fishing. As a result, local people are now catching fish of a size that they thought didn't exist anymore. They're catching fish that they thought were extinct because they haven't caught certain kinds of fish for more than 10 years because those big foreign fishing trawlers were taking everything. And now people are able to feed their families as well as sell fish onto the market. My job has two challenges. One is complexity and the other is volume, if I were to put it like that. There are certain decisions that I have to make that are very complex, that involve multiple people, offices, countries, regions, and so on. And I find that the complexity side is not too difficult for me. What I find more difficult is volume, and that is because of the space within which Greenpeace is operating, which is we are one of the few organizations that are saying what needs to be said, that we are running out of time and climate, that our children's future is at stake, and we're prepared to put our lives on the line to actually work for a better, safer future, which is more environmentally sustainable. And in that sense, I would say that we are at a moment in history now where Greenpeace is expected to not simply win battles, which we do regularly, and we win some substantial battles against a company that's destroying our oceans, or a company that's in fossil fuels, or a company that's destroying the Indonesian or Amazon or Congo basin forests, which are critical for climate protection, but also critical for biodiversity. My first paid job was at the tender age of 26 when I came back from exile from Oxford back to South Africa, and that was as executive director of an adult education non-profit organization. And I chose to go into that job because I felt one of the worst legacies left by the apartheid system was the fact that our majority of our people couldn't read and write as a conscious part of apartheid policy. And so I worked for a very highly respected adult education focused non-profit. I started off in a NGO that was focused in adult education in one city in my country, Durban. Today, I'm focused on an NGO that's geographical coverage is global, and that even though its primary entry point is environment, it also intersects with such issues as workers' rights and gender and so on, because you cannot address environment without understanding how environment intersects with people. So that's quite a big gap from a NGO focused on one city to a global NGO. But what helped me in that journey is being willing to take risk, by willing to imagine that you could contribute. The first skill you need to work in a non-profit organization is you must be a human being, right? A genuine human being. You know, somebody who just doesn't live and breathe, but somebody who's really curious about what's happening around them, concerned about what's happening around them, and believing that our presence on the planet is not simply to be here and just receive everything coming in our direction, but also our presence on the planet is to try to shape the world and change it so that you leave it better than what you found it. And so the first skill is, and it's not a skill, it's more an attribute, is compassion, caring, concern, and courage. Because you cannot work in the non-profit sector if you don't have courage. But there are, of course, generic skills that you need. You need analysis, you need writing, you need public speaking, you need interpersonal skills, you need good command of the new communications technologies and so on. So depending which kind of area of non-profit work you want to go to, there might be some specific skill sets that you need. So for example, if you are going to work in an NGO that works in ocean protection, then you need to obviously understand more about oceans and the science around oceans and so on. But generally speaking, it is not very difficult to enter the non-profit world. My recommendation to anybody thinking about working full-time in the non-profit sector is that firstly, I would encourage you to consider it, because this is a field which has grown. There are more non-profits emerging. There are more diversity of jobs in the sector, more complex jobs as well. And I would say that the most important thing that people should do now is they should start volunteering. So if you know you want to work in health or education or environment, find an NGO in that field and start volunteering, because that's the only and best way actually you can actually get some experience. Because unfortunately all employers ask the question of what is your experience? And in the non-profit sector, if you say, I actually volunteered for 6 years, so many months a year, and I acquired the skills. In the non-profit sector, we say, wow, come on board, we value that. I don't think always in the for-profit and government sector, they place the same weight on volunteer work experience. And I think if people are wanting to start getting involved, they must develop some track record. Then they should also read up and be as informed content-wise about the area that they want to move into.